Breaking news, we're on verdict watch here at HLN. Jury in their second day of deliberations in the Michael Jackson death trial. Will they find Dr. Conrad Murray guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the death of the King of Pop? We have breaking news, and we're going to share it with you throughout the afternoon. An exclusive interview with Dr. Arnie Klein, Michael Jackson's dermatologist. We'll be playing some of that for you. We just heard a little bit. He said Michael Jackson was not an addict, but then later in the interview, you're going to hear him say he was pretty much addicted to propofol. There are some contradictions here. I want to go to John Manuelian, criminal defense attorney. John, what do you think of Arnie Klein as this jury deliberates? Is this jury talking about Arnie Klein? Are they talking about Demerol and whether or not Michael Jackson was addicted to the stuff?
You know, Chernoff didn't really hammer that point enough, Mike, during his closing argument. So I don't know. It was a point during the entire trial. But Chernoff sort of, his soda lacked, just went to fizz at the closing argument. He just tired out and really didn't go over that. So I don't know if they're really talking about that right now. But what surprises me is the fact that Klein's talking to Gene Casarez. Surprises me that he talked so much and said what he said. So a lot of surprising things have been happening in the past 24 hours. And
again, you're looking at some of the footage of that interview with our Gene Casarez. What struck you about it, John?
Well, the fact that Garo Gazarian has been vehemently, having him blocked from the media, doing all his media appearances for him, and then all of a sudden he just pops out of nowhere and is verbose, is gregarious, is offering a lot of details. Why now? Why did he come forward now? It just strikes me the timing is just really interesting.
Got it. And again, we're going to be listening to some more of that. It's breaking news, exclusive interview with our Gene Casarez, talking about he did 3 interventions to get Michael off the propofol. That's interesting stuff. Want to listen, though, John. This is David Walgren's rebuttal closing, very end, and he makes it very simple, basically telling the jury it's not that complicated. Let's give that a quick listen.
And I trust you'll find that, again, although you have a very important role, at the end of the day, the issue of whether or not Conrad Murray was criminally negligent is not that complicated. This type of medical care has never been seen. This was a pharmaceutical experiment in a bedroom.
Goes toward the very end of David Walgren's rebuttal closing. John, did he bring it home? And do you think he really brought it home with that simple argument? Because they've been going with simplicity pretty much since day one.
I love the pharmaceutical experiment argument. David Walgren did bring it home. And the problem is Chernoff did not attack the deviation points of Steinberg, didn't attack what Schaefer said, just left it all up there. I don't know what was going on in Chernoff's mind. He was not aggressive. Walgren, on the other hand, just perfect. I mean, he's just surgical strikes with all of his issues. He's right on the money with the common sense. It's not complicated as far as abandonment is concerned. Made it very easy for this jury to come back and vote guilty. But we just have to wait and see at this point.
Right. Day 2 here, jury deliberations. We are on verdict watch here at HLN. Today could be the day we find out the fate of Dr. Conrad Murray, facing maximum 4 years for involuntary manslaughter and the death of the King of Pop. We're also playing you this breaking news, an interview with Arnie Klein, with our Gene Casarez. Arnie Klein, the dermatologist, treated Michael Jackson, vilified by the defense in this case as a man who got Michael Jackson addicted to Demerol. And maybe that had something to do, a factor in Michael Jackson's death as he was going through Demerol withdrawals. That's the story. That's the narrative coming from the defense. We're going to be talking about that. Let you hear some more of that interview as you look at the great seal of the state of California over my shoulder. This jury deliberating day 2. We're all over it here at HLN. Keep it right here. Breaking news, day 2 of verdict watch. Jury deliberating now for their second day. As you see the great seal of the state of California behind my shoulder. All right, will Conrad Murray be found guilty of involuntary manslaughter? Still waiting the answer to that question today. Could be the day we get an answer. I want to go back to our legal correspondent for In Session on our sister network, True TV, Beth Casarez. Beth, first time you and I have had a chance to break down a little bit more of those final arguments from both sides. Let's talk David Walgren here, rebuttal closing. I thought he was better in the rebuttal closing than he was in his initial closing, and we just played the soundbite, how he brought it home with simplicity. It's not that hard. This was a pharmaceutical experiment. He's got to be guilty. Was he effective in your mind, Beth?
Well, he certainly was more animated. He showed a little more passion in the second closing that he gave, the rebuttal closing, the final word for the jury. You know, jurors were very attentive for all of the closing arguments, not really taking notes. This isn't evidence. It's just an opportunity for the lawyers to obviously argue their positions. But they were really focused. And what David Walgren did in his rebuttal close was stand at the podium. He didn't walk back and forth in front of the jury the way Ed Chernoff did, where jurors would follow Chernoff back and forth. He stood at that podium, which was near the public gallery, so jurors had to turn sort of slightly to their left to watch him, and right behind David Walgren was the Jackson family, so that they could see the Jackson family right there as he was making his very passionate argument. So it was very effective, and I assume that that was strategic on his part to stand where he was.
Thanks for shedding light on that. That is interesting, with the Jackson family as a backdrop. Let's go. Thanks, Beth. Let's go to John Manuelian, criminal defense attorney. John, that's an interesting note as we see that. And let me ask you, as someone who's tried cases, how much can closing arguments win or lose a case? And do you think that they're the difference maker in a case like this?
I think usually, believe it or not, most of the jurors have made up their minds in the opening statements, and all the closing is doing is tying up what you said in the opening statements. Remember, the opening argument are promises, are a set of promises you tell a jury that you're going to keep. And Walgren, in this situation, did keep all his promises, did tie everything up. Everything that he said in the opening statement was corroborated in his closing statements through Schaefer's testimony, through Steinberg's testimony. So it was very, very well done. Chernoff, on the other hand, notes were all over the place. He was sweating. He even said, is it hot in here? Is it just me? He was rambling. He was crossing his arms. He was all over the place. I actually wanted to go in that courthouse and throw in a white towel for him, Mike.
Wow. Well, does the jury understand all that? Do they remember all that, the promises in opening, maybe not fulfilled through a trial and brought home in closing?
If it's brought out, and that's what the defense attorney's supposed to be doing, mentioning all the things Walgren said that he never tied up. But the honest truth is Walgren did tie everything that he set up, but Chernoff needed to go back and talk about the deviations and why they weren't deviations. 17 deviations mentioned by Schaefer, 6 mentioned by Dr. Steinberg. None of this was discussed. He just walked out of there, and his last words were something to the effect of, well, do the right thing. And he just sat down. I'm very critical of Chernoff, have always been, and I just think he just died out. He fizzed out at the end.
You know, and truth be told, John, as you and I have walked through this case together a lot, through most of it, you have looked for ways. You're a criminal defense attorney. You've brought that side, and you've also been very honest that you don't think Ed Chernoff, Michael Flanagan did a great job. Let's be honest, correct?
It's an in-defense. That's correct.
Okay. All right, I got the counselor. 2-word answer. I love it. Okay, much more coming up. We're on Verdict Watch. Keep it here. Welcome back. Breaking news. We're on Verdict Watch here at HLN. The jury deliberating now for the second day, and they've been deliberating over 8 hours in the Michael Jackson death trial. Is today verdict day? Will we know the fate of Dr. Conrad Murray? We're all over it here at HLN. As promised, we're playing breaking news for you. Exclusive interview with Dr. Arnie Klein. We'll get to more of that throughout the afternoon. But first, let's take you to Los Angeles. CNN producer Ted Rowland's joining us. Ted, doing a great job. And Ted, to be honest with you, I was one that thought by now you and I would be talking about a verdict, and it would be a done deal. Not so. This jury, and as you've laid it out there many times, a deliberate, note-taking jury. So on that front, probably not as surprising that they're really going over everything, as they should, with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going on in that deliberation room. I mean, there could be disagreement. There could be 2 factions set up. You never know. So the idea that they spent more than a day of deliberation after more than a month of testimony and all of those witnesses, I don't think that that's a surprise. I think if it goes through today and, into tomorrow, then maybe that would be a bit of a surprise in that, or not a surprise, but it would indicate that there's a rift there, that they're actually going back and forth. But they haven't had any questions either during the 7.5 hours. They've had some evidence brought back, but no questions, and nothing has come up yet. We'll see if that changes at all today.
Yeah, wanted some highlighters, maybe checking out jury instructions one more time. Hey, let's go back to my friend and colleague, Jane Velez-Mitchell, host of Issues. You can watch it tonight, 7 Eastern, right here on HLN. Jane, outside the courthouse. Jane, now let's talk about the energy here today. It was just electric on Friday. Same today?
Fascinating stuff going on here as we all gather outside the courthouse waiting for a verdict. We have a lady here, Felicia. She is studying to be a registered nurse. You are in court if there's a verdict today. What have you learned briefly from watching this case?
I'm learning more about propofol. I never knew that exists until this trial. So now it's making me make sure I follow all standard, precautions.
So when you become a nurse,
yes, you have to follow the standard procedure for when you become a nurse.
And you will not give people what they ask for just because they asked for it? Was that what you were telling me?
No, exactly. I would not just give a patient, no matter who it is, what you want because you're asking for it. It's no money can pay that.
So it's been very educational for you.
Yes.
Now, Miriam here is telling me, regaling me with stories about how she was in Iran and had to smuggle Michael Jackson music. Tell me about that.
That's right. After 1979 revolution of Islamic Republican Revolution of Iran, all Western music became illegal, and I was 11 and I used to go buy it black market on the side of the road just like this, like you would buy drugs, excuse my language, and put it under my armpit and run home before the revolutionary soldiers would get us.
And that's Michael Jackson music?
Michael Jackson's music, and Iranian Americans love Michael Jackson's. All Iranians love Michael Jackson's, and I wanted to be here on behalf of all Iranian Americans and Iranians and say we support Michael Jackson and we love him, and we used to smuggle his tapes under our armpits.
All right, thank you, Miriam. Now, one more fascinating thing. I'm learning some technology here. Tell us, Rita, very quickly.
Hey, these are QR codes. These, if you scan them with a QR code scanner on your smartphone, these will take you to reflections on the dance, and this will take you to a helpful list of who Michael Jackson is and his message and the global phenomenon of love.
And this lady has scanned them, and there you go, right there. And you can press video, and you can see video of Michael Jackson come right up, and you learn all about it. I'm getting a high-tech education out here. She's taking the photo right now to load the website. So you just take a photo of that and it loads it. So it's absolutely incredible. I got to tell you, just a tremendous energy, and we're all sharing stories. It's quite a scene out here. Back to you.
Absolutely, sharing technology. This case, as we knew, has an international flair. Michael Jackson loved the world over, and we're getting a sense of that. Jane, you've really brought that as you've talked to people from Germany, Italy, Iran. It is fascinating. And again, we'll be checking back with Jane in just a moment. I want to share again, this is breaking news for us. Exclusive interview with Dr. Arnie Klein, Michael Jackson's dermatologist. Our Gene Casarez from In Session sat down with Dr. Klein, and we just heard him moments ago say Michael Jackson was not an addict. Now he's going to talk about the amount of Demerol given to Michael Jackson. Let's listen.
What do you think about somebody giving him 900 milligrams?
It depends on, first of all, it's not a dose that I would do 3 days in a row. But the other thing is, I don't think that's impossible to give, but I wouldn't do that all the time. Because if you look at the last records that we look about me, let's take my records, personally. Let's take what you're giving me of this, because I'm not going to make an opinion on what someone else did. It's not my vision to give an opinion on what someone else did. Look at my records. How much did I give him his last 2 visits to my office a week apart? What were the last 2 doses he got?
100 milligrams.
Now, why, if a person addicted, how can you reduce his dose? What happens with addiction? Where do the doses go? You know what happens with addiction? Now, just ask me, what happens with addiction? What doses happen with addiction?
You keep going, you keep increasing.
Right, tolerance. So how could I be decreasing it to 100 milligrams if it was addicted to it? So, you know, it's all the nonsense they presented it because they had experts on addiction who knew nothing. Now, let me tell you something about propofol and why you can't self-inject it. Do you know how painful propofol is on injection? It burns on injection. So this nonsense about him self-injecting, does anyone there ask why, if there was any pain there? Did anyone ask why all the marks were all over the body? Did anyone ask that? The other thing is, you know that he has a history of propofol abuse that dates back to the 90s. That I made 3 interventions on him on propofol. They had a doctor, plastic surgeon in the 90s who had done multiple plastic surgical procedures on him, who used to go on tour with him and give him Demerol every night because he couldn't sleep without it. Now, this is not a problem of just Michael Jackson, because you know what? We have 30% of America suffers from insomnia. You aware of that? You know how many prescriptions are written for drugs for insomnia yearly? 56 million in America. And it's probably going to increase another 30%. So insomnia is a disease that we've created by over-medicating people to sleep.
There was consistently an increase in the Demerol, and then in June, there was a decrease.
You want to know why?
Yeah, you were back in town.
I came back in town and I decided that I didn't need to give him the dose I was giving him, so I was going to taper him off the demo because he was never addicted to it. To be addicted to it, you have to give the person the drug every 6 hours, not just one day, not just 2 days, but every day you have to give a drug to be addicted to every 6 hours.
So here's my question, many questions. Why is the defense targeting you?
Why? Because I'm always the target. You remember Irina Ivanova in Botox, that's case, where she sued me over Botox? You remember I got sued over Botox, even though I invented the way Botox is used, and I promise you I'm incomparable in it. I'm always a target. You know why? Because I'm well known. And people are always going to target me, because I'm a little larger than life. Because when you think differently than people, when you see things differently than people, look what they did to Galileo. Look what they did to Michael Jackson. They targeted him, didn't they, for the child molestation things? When you're a little bit different than most people, you always serve as a target.
Fascinating to listen to Dr. Arnie Klein saying there he is larger than life. And when you're a little different, you become a target. What are you guys saying about this interview as we listening to it? From Facebook, Karen's posted this. Klein assisted with his addiction issues, talking about Michael Jackson, but the trial is about Murray. Nikki posted this on Facebook. Sounds like Klein is trying to get himself out of trouble. Let's go to CNN correspondent, back to Ted Rollins. Ted, you listen to that, Arnold Klein. First off, just your reaction as you hear him and Gene talk there.
Well, you know, there's always two sides to every story, so to hear him, you know, say that he was out of town and all of that, it puts some light into it. But, you know, he's not under oath doing a media interview, and the question is, well, where were the medical records then? And if they were subpoenaed, so they said, give us all the medical records. If he's saying that those weren't the correct records or he had nothing to do with it, well, you know, I mean, that brings up a whole set of other questions. But I think one of the Facebook comments is absolutely accurate. He's not on trial. It's Dr. Conrad Murray, and the judge in this case has limited Klein's involvement and didn't allow him to take the stand. So we never got that under oath questioning that maybe would have shed even more light on the whole situation.
Ted, 15 seconds or less. Is this a different trial if Klein testifies?
Yes, because they could have created the boogeyman even to a larger degree by putting Klein on, and it would have given jurors something else to think about. They tried to do it without Klein in the room. If they'd have brought him in, it would have been even more effective for him.
Well put. Nice job, Ted. All right, we are on Verdict Watch. This is day 2, jury deliberations in the Michael Jackson death trial. Now, breaking news, you're going to hear more from Arnold Klein throughout the afternoon. We're going to take you back to Los Angeles as you look at the clock there. This jury deliberating more than 8 hours now. Stay with us.